You there?
Yes, I am.
So a lot of people think that they're whistleblowers, and a lot of people, may have the courage or may not have the courage to tell on their employers. But very often, what people perceive to be a case isn't really a case. Now, in this case, Pete Pahara said, I'm going to represent the whistleblower and I take on this case against Westchester Medical Center. How does it work that he's involved, that there was no judge, but you're representing the plaintiff? Can you explain it to me?
Sure. Under the False Claims Act, individuals who have evidence of fraud against a government program such as Medicare, Medicaid, government contracting, or procurement hire a lawyer such as me, and this is a specialty area of practice. We prepare, evaluate the case, prepare the case, scrutinize the evidence, and file a complaint under seal in federal district court and bring the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office or to the Attorney General of New York. And they debrief the whistleblower, and more it's a working partnership between federal prosecutors and private attorneys and the whistleblower to make the case, investigate the case, tell them where the documents are, who the witnesses are, who they should speak to, and the government takes its time, puts together the case, evaluates it, and ultimately determines whether to intervene in the case, and as they did here, and settle the case. Sometimes the government declines the case, and the whistleblower, after good evaluation with us, can take it forward, and we've taken some cases forward that the government has not intervened in.
I see. So you always reserve the option to sue if the first course of action is rejected.
Correct. I mean, we initiate a lawsuit, but it's the government's in the first instance to prosecute.
It's very interesting the way it's done. It's a little unusual. Okay. So, and Westchester Medical Center got a whopping fine of $18.8 million. Why? What did they do wrong?
What they did wrong is they violated what's called the Stark laws. These are laws, and it's sort of like anti-kickback. In the medical profession where federal health care dollars are involved, if there's a financial relationship between the physician and the hospital, and that is a relationship where there is a subject to abuse for unnecessary referrals for services, unnecessary procedures, and potentially patient harm. As professionals, I know every doctor wants to believe that their professional opinion could not be compromised by a financial arrangement, but unfortunately that's just not the case. And when there's a financial relationship between a hospital and physicians, physician's judgment is compromised as a matter of law, and any referral for a procedure to that hospital is disallowed for reimbursement under Medicare or Medicaid.
Okay, you have to forgive me. I'm talking with Robert Sadowski, and I mean this truly. But isn't this the case that almost every group is affiliated with a hospital, and so they, for example, that your local, orthopedist does his surgery at your local hospital, and that chances are if he orders a procedure or something, you're going to have it there? I mean, I don't understand what set this apart. What made this fraud versus the normal arrangements that we see every day in terms of affiliations?
Sure. Well, the Stark laws are very complicated, and there are lots of exceptions. But in this case, there were some financial arrangements that where debts owed were forgiven. There were arrangements that clearly smelled of what you would normally in the parlance call a kickback. So, financial arrangements are very difficult between physicians and hospitals. They have to be scrutinized if a doctor is going to engage in a financial arrangement. They happen a lot, but they are largely illegal and subject the hospital to disgorge the money it receives under Medicare and Medicaid.
So
there were loans here, there were lease payments, there were lent fellowships to doctors, serious infractions of the Stark Law.
So the idea is that Westchester Medical Center, this is the accusation and the idea, that they paid this particular cardiology associate's practice in order for the cardiology associate's practice to refer patients back to the hospital?
That's correct. That's it in a nutshell. Those are our allegations.
Okay. And Preet Bharara thought that they were sufficient enough and substantial enough that he went after the hospital, and the hospital, in lieu of bringing it to a judge or jury, decided that they would settle.
You got it in a nutshell.
Okay, so now when they settle, just because I want to educate my audience about what goes on in the real world, when they settle and it's $18.8 million, does that money go to you as the attorney to be largely dispersed to this one whistleblower's now estate family?
The rights of the whistleblower survive his death, so his estate is entitled under the statute to receive between 15 and 25% of the government's recovery.
Oh,
so that's a determination based upon how good his evidence was, how good the cooperation was, a myriad of factors that the government looks at to determine what the KETAM award will be to the whistleblower.
So he's looking more or less possibly at about, or his estate, possibly about $3 million here, more or less.
More or less, yes.
More or less. And of that $3 million, you as the attorney, are you subject to the statutory rules with respect to contingency in which you have to also disclose what percentage you're getting?
There isn't, under this statute, a disclosure requirement, but there is a contingency fee arrangement in these types of cases, and they vary from 30% to even sometimes higher.
To higher? Oh, so they're not capped at a third?
No, they are not.
Oh, that's interesting. So okay.
These are very high-risk cases. The government only intervenes in about 20% of the cases.
I see. Okay.
So it's a very high risk practice, and there's a lot of investment that goes into the case in screening the right cases, and we as KETAM lawyers put our credibility on the line when we bring someone into the government's office.
How many of these cases have you done? Have you worked?
It is about 80% of my practice.
Wow.
I'm a former prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, and I managed the healthcare prosecutions. So I come with a background of this. It's largely my practice. We have a national practice. We try cases. Right now, we have, I would venture a guess, 50 cases pending around the country.
You have 50 cases. So this is something that, because it's essentially federal law, you can do in every state.
Yes, that's right. We do it nationally, and there are states in which we are increasingly active. In fact, I'm in Florida today, meeting with the U.S. Attorney here because of the demographics and the aging population in Florida. There is a significant healthcare fraud problem with the amount of dollars that are spent, as well as federal defense contracting.
Federal defense contracting?
Yes, the False Claims Act reaches any federal program. So any federal dollars spent in the defense industry, in transportation industry. We recently settled a case in South Florida against Miami-Dade County. They had been misusing federal grant funds for their transportation system.
This is really fascinating. And before we close, I just want to say we're talking with Robert Sadowski, pardon me, of Sadowski and Fischer. I just want to say that there really is always a tremendous personal toll taken on the whistleblower. I mean, remember that movie with Russell Crowe? That's not atypical of what happens to people. And so they have an iconoclastic bravery, I think.
They're true. They're very special people, very brave. And remember that all of these proceedings and investigation occur under seal, so they have really no one to talk to except their attorney and their immediate family. So it's a very lonely, isolating existence, and they lose friends. They can be blacklisted in their professional world. It's a very hard word for a whistleblower, and I caution whistleblowers when they come to me that this is a life-changing course that they've taken, and we work through those issues very carefully before someone takes the step to come forward and blow the whistle.
I want to thank you, Robert Sadowski, for being on the show. Thanks for giving us the inside scoop into this case against Westchester Medical Center, and very much